At 8:15 in the morning, on August 6, 1945, Hiroshima vanished in a flash brighter than the sun. 3 days later, Nagasaki followed. In less than 10 seconds, 2 cities were turned into, laboratories of human survival. Most people died instantly, yet tens of thousands lived through the blast, the heat, the radiation, and the collapse of everything they knew. They were not soldiers, scientists, or trained survivalists. They were clerks, children, factory workers, grandparents. Their survival was not luck alone. It was shaped by physics, geography, human behavior, and split-second decisions that, still matter today. If you want to understand how civilians endured the most destructive weapon ever used in war, this story is not about the bomb itself. It's about where people stood, how buildings failed, how bodies reacted, and what choices quietly meant life instead of death. Once you understand those patterns, modern survival planning looks very different. Why distance from the hypocenter mattered more than anything else. The single greatest factor in survival was distance from the hypocenter, the exact point beneath the explosion. In Hiroshima, nearly everyone within 1 kilometer died instantly from heat, pressure, or collapse. Beyond that zone, survival rose sharply. People who were, 2 to 3 kilometers away often lived, even though their windows shattered, walls collapsed, and fires spread rapidly. This teaches a crucial survival principle. In any blast scenario, even the most extreme ones, marginal distance really does save lives. Civilians who were commuting, working outdoors, or maybe crossing bridges farther from the city centre survived at much higher rates than those who were indoors near ground zero. Applied today, this means, evacuation distance matters more than equipment. When warnings exist, even just partial movement away from likely targets dramatically increases survival odds. How being indoors sometimes saved lives instead of killing them. Contrary to popular belief, being indoors did not always mean death. Many survivors were inside reinforced concrete buildings, especially banks, offices, and government structures. These buildings absorbed blast pressure and blocked thermal radiation. In Hiroshima, the famous example of survivors inside the Bank of Japan, only a few hundred meters from the blast, demonstrates this clearly. Wooden homes ignited instantly, while concrete structures shielded occupants long enough for them to escape. The lesson here is about structural shielding. Thick walls, interior rooms, and minimal window exposure reduce injury from both blast and heat. In modern terms, basements, parking garages, and interior stairwells remain among the safest places during explosive events. Why lying flat and turning away reduced fatal injuries? Many survivors reported instinctively dropping to the ground when they saw the flash. This simple reaction reduced exposed surface area, minimized burns, and protected vital organs from flying debris. Those who remained standing were often thrown violently or struck by collapsing materials. The physics is, simple. Blast pressure travels horizontally, and bodies that present less surface area suffer less force. This principle still applies today. In any sudden explosive or shockwave event, dropping flat, covering the head, and turning away from the source dramatically reduces injury risk. even when no shelter is immediately available. How terrain and urban layout quietly determined who lived. Hiroshima was relatively flat, which allowed the blast to spread evenly and cause massive destruction. Nagasaki, however, was surrounded by hills and valleys. These natural barriers disrupted the blast wave, shielding entire neighborhoods. As a result, Nagasaki had lower immediate casualties despite a bomb of similar power. Civilians on the far side of hills or behind elevated terrain survived at much higher rates. This highlights an overlooked survival factor: terrain shielding. Even small elevation changes, embankments, or solid barriers can block lethal force. In modern emergency planning, choosing locations with natural shielding, such as hills, earth berms, or dense structures, can significantly improve survival chances. You know, it's a grim truth, but fires actually killed more people than radiation in those first hours. The immediate aftermath, well, it wasn't silent at all. It was fire. In Hiroshima, firestorms formed as thousands of wooden structures, all at once, just ignited. Survivors who managed to escape early, moving toward rivers or open spaces, they lived. Those who stayed trapped indoors, they often suffocated or burned. Now, radiation sickness did develop later, but honestly, fire caused the majority of deaths after the blast itself. Survivors, time and again, described one priority movement. Getting out of burning zones mattered more than treating injuries. If you think about it today, this really reinforces evacuation over shelter, once structural collapse and fire risk become the main threats. You know, water sources really became lifelines instead of, well, death traps. Rivers played a crucial role in survival. Thousands of people actually fled into the water to escape the unbearable heat and flames, while sadly many drowned or died from their injuries. Those who used water carefully did manage to survive severe burns. Survivors would soak their clothing, cool their skin, and stay near the riverbanks, rather than fully submerging themselves for long periods. This, I think, teaches a critical survival nuance. Water can certainly save lives when it's used to manage heat and fire exposure, but panic immersion, honestly, can be fatal. In modern disaster scenarios involving fire or extreme heat, controlled cooling and hydration are without a doubt life-saving tactics when escape routes exist. One of the reasons so many survivors were fooled was this delayed medical collapse. You know, one of the most haunting aspects of Hiroshima and Nagasaki is that many people who walked away seemingly unharmed ended up dying days or even weeks later from radiation sickness. Interestingly, survivors who rested, avoided exertion, and sought shelter tended to have higher survival rates. You know, those who pushed themselves physically often collapsed. The practical takeaway here is recovery discipline. After any extreme exposure event, conserving energy, avoiding unnecessary movement, and, well, seeking medical evaluation, even when symptoms seem mild, can mean the difference between recovery and delayed death. So, what do these civilian survival stories mean today? Hiroshima and Nagasaki prove that survival in extreme disasters is not mythical or random. It actually follows patterns. Distance, shielding, body positioning, terrain, movement decisions, and post-event behavior all matter. These are not just abstract lessons, you see. They apply to industrial explosions, urban disasters, and large-scale emergencies today. Civilians survived the atomic bomb without modern gear, warning systems, or preparation. Their experiences, well, they offer hard-earned knowledge that still saves lives.